We're awaiting a potentially huge development in the crash investigation. CNN's Phil Black is joining us now from the eastern Ukrainian city where pro-Russian forces are expected to hand over the Malaysian airliner's black boxes. What's the very latest there, Phil?
Well, Phil, Wolf, we are still waiting. We've been invited here to the headquarters of the so-called Donetsk People's Republic. It's the headquarters of the pro-Russian rebels. We were invited here to witness the handover of those voice and data recorders from the rebels to Malaysian officials who've travelled here and who've negotiated this handover. It was supposed to happen 2 hours ago. There is a crowded room full of frustrated journalists waiting to see this. It still has not happened, but the expectation is that it will happen tonight at some stage.
Итак, дамы и господа, хочу вам сказать, что сегодня был довольно важный день в жизни Донецкой Народной Республики. Информационным поводом последнего времени основным стала чудовищная трагедия. Падение пассажирского самолета, гибель практически 300 ни в чем не повинных людей, ставших жертвами необъявленной войны, которую киевские власти, нынешняя Украина, ведет против народа Донбасса, против Донецкой Народной Республики и Луганской Народной Республики. В этой войне погибли уже, по нашим данным, 1000 людей. Не 1000 людей погибло в ходе этой необъявленной войны. Но вот произошло событие, которое повлекло за собой еще, которое унесло еще 300 человеческих жизней. Естественно, украинская сторона пытается обвинить нас в том, что мы совершили это преступление. Я еще раз заявляю, это наглая ложь и клевета. Это часть той информационной войны, которую ведет против нас нынешняя Украина. Мы не имели ни технических возможностей сбить этот самолет. Мы не имели, самое главное, никакого мотива. Мы не получили от этого и не получаем никакой выгоды от этой человеческой трагедии. Напротив, наши противники, украинская сторона, имели и технические возможности этот самолет сбить, имели и мотивы, для выгоды, которые они могли, извращенные выгоды, которые они могли извлекать из этой трагедии, она очевидна. Но я не на этом сейчас хочу остановиться. Мы давно, с самого начала, с самого момента этой чудовищной катастрофы, призывали к объективному и полноценному расследованию. Дали долго. Первыми приехали представители ОБСЕ. Они появились на месте трагедии спустя сутки после того, как она произошла. Они предлагали нам сохранить место трагедии в неприкосновенности, не передвигать тела погибших. Однако, движимые человеческими чувствами, обычными простыми человеческими чувствами, понимая, что чувствуют родственники и близкие погибших, мы буквально уже после прошествия 2 суток стали убирать тела погибших и все равно ждали экспертов, которые могут приехать и работать на месте катастрофы. Мы знали, что в Киеве находится уже к тому времени более 80 экспертов, которые готовы приехать сюда. Однако мы понимали, что киевская сторона, украинская сторона, крайне не заинтересована в том, чтобы было проведено объективное расследование этого события, чтобы было проведено расследование с участием международных экспертов, чтобы истина была обнаружена. Мы понимали, что украинская сторона мешает экспертам приехать сюда, запугивает их. Однако все же нашлись храбрые и честные люди, которые, несмотря на то, что украинская сторона никак не помогала, а скорее мешала им, тем не менее появились у нас в Донецкой Народной Республике. Сегодня к нам прибыла группа голландских, ну скажем так, медиков, специалистов по работе с телами погибших, состоящие из 3 человек, и группа экспертов из Малайзии. во главе с полковником Саном. Эта группа состоит из 12 человек. И группа голландских экспертов сегодня уже работала с телами погибших в городе Дорезе. И группа экспертов из Малайзии также выезжала на место событий, хотя, к сожалению, на место событий не сумела попасть сегодня, потому что существовала угроза удара по группе со стороны авиации противника. И поэтому было принято решение отложить эту поездку на иной срок. Надо сказать, что с тех пор, как мы начали собирать тела погибших, собирать их в железнодорожные рефрижераторы, 5 железнодорожных рефрижераторов, миссия ОБСЕ и киевская сторона, которая вступает с нами в видеоконсультации, конкретно вступила в видеоконсультации с представителем нашего правительства Андреем Путиным, всячески торопит нас с тем, чтобы мы как можно скорее отправили бы тела погибших в Харьков, ради того, чтобы там их можно было опознавать, работать с ними, отправлять далее, прежде всего отправить их далее в Нидерланды, для того, чтобы уже там происходили все необходимые процедуры. Итак, на сегодняшний день эти рефрижераторы загружены. Тела 282 погибших и, если я не ошибаюсь, 87, извините за жесткость выражения, других останков. Эти вагоны опечатаны. Поезд с останками погибших на данный момент находится на территории Донецка, на железнодорожном вокзале Донецка и готов к отправке в Харьков. С украинской стороной мы об этом договорились. Но мы, естественно, не хотели и не хотим передавать эти тела, которые сами по себе могут служить уликами вины украинской стороны, безоглядно передавать их украинской стороне. И мы рады, что представители ОБСЕ, а также представители экспертных групп от Малайзии и, соответственно, эксперты из Голландии согласились, что они будут сопровождать этот поезд и доедут вместе с этим поездом, на этом поезде доедут до Харькова, где уже будут тела перегружены и отправлены в Нидерланды для дальнейшего обследования всех остальных процедур, ну и последующего захоронения или в Нидерландах, или в иных странах, в иных местах, в зависимости от того, где находится родина погибших. Есть и второй аспект проблемы с самолетом. Он заключается в следующем. Нами в ходе обследования места этой катастрофы были обнаружены технические обломки самолета, которые мы практически с уверенностью, с очень высокой степенью уверенности считаем черными ящиками. Очевидно, что эти обломки самолета, их анализ и исследования могут пролить свет на то, как действительно произошла эта чудовищная катастрофа, как действительно произошло это преступление и кто в действительности в нем виновен. Поэтому нами было принято решение не ждать, когда к нам приедут остальные эксперты, которые то ли приедут к нам, то ли не приедут и когда они будут, пока нам неизвестно, а передать эти условные пока для нас, потому что среди нас, среди представителей ДНР нет авиационных экспертов, так вот, передать эти черные ящики в руки малазийской стороны, в руки малазийских экспертов. Сейчас мы произведем процедуру передачи этих черных ящиков, и представители ДНР, и представители Малайзии, представители Донецкой Народной Республики, заместитель генерального прокурора Донецкой Народной Республики подпишут соответствующие протоколы о передаче. Хочу вам сказать, что в эти протоколы внесена позиция о том, что Малайзия не просто забирает эти черные ящики, но обязуется предоставить их для совместного обследования, для совместной экспертизы специалистам ИКАО, то есть профессионалам международного класса по исследованию причин авиационных катастроф. Это обязательство зафиксировано в том документе, который сейчас должен быть подписан между Малайзией и Донецкой Народной Республикой. Хочу вам сказать, что наша договоренность возникла не в последнюю очередь в результате сегодняшнего телефонного разговора между мной и премьером Малайзии. Мы об этом договорились, и мы наши обязательства будем выполнять. И еще я хочу сказать следующее. Нами, Донецкой Народной Республикой, для того, чтобы место этой аварии сохранялось бы максимальной неприкосновенности, и для того, чтобы эксперты, которые, мы надеемся, еще будут приезжать к нам и будут работать на месте аварии, потому что нами еще пока не обнаружены тела 16 погибших, потому что на месте аварии еще лежит огромное количество разного рода обломков самолета, исследований, которые помогут пролить свет на причины этой катастрофы. Нами объявляется, уже оно действует, прекращение огня в одностороннем порядке. Еще раз подчеркиваю, одностороннее прекращение огня в 10-километровой зоне в районе аварии. Мы, конечно, надеемся на то, что реакция противника, нашего противника, киевской стороны нынешней Украины в этом случае будет адекватной, и что они также не будут вести боевые действия и стрелять в этом районе, и позволят экспертам, как нашим экспертам, так и международным экспертам, всем тем, кто сюда приедет для исследования причин этой катастрофы, для того, чтобы найти и опознать тела всех погибших. Так вот, мы надеемся, что они не будут стрелять в этом районе и не будут мешать работе всех экспертов. Ну а сейчас, собственно, вы увидите процедуру передачи черных ящиков малазийской стороне. Еще раз я хочу подчеркнуть, что мы сделали все для того, чтобы отнестись к телам погибших с максимальной степенью уважения. Мы сделали все, чтобы не нарушить традиции ислама, которые исповедовали многие из погибших. Мы надеемся, что черные ящики, я прошу представителей протокола и еще раз глубочайшее соболезнование всем семьям и близким погибших. Прошу вас, господа.
Да, я готов сюда. Руками.
Пока упаковываются черные ящики, пока мы наблюдаем, как происходит процесс передачи собственности Малайзии, возвращения этой собственности, собственно говоря, представителям Малайзии, я хотел бы еще раз выразить глубочайшую признательность всем экспертам, как голландским, так и представителям Малайзии, тем, кто сюда доехал, и высказать уважение к их мужеству. Потому что, вот, например, малазийские эксперты сюда приехали без всякого сопровождения всему мировому сообществу, истину относительно причин гибели людей, которые... Я хочу предоставить слово представителю Малайзии, господину полковнику Саргину.
No problem.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Добрый вечер всем. It is 1 o'clock, 1:20 in the morning.
Сейчас у нас уже час 20 утра.
I want to talk much. On behalf of the government of Malaysia, I would like to convey our sincere appreciation. Our sincere appreciation to His Excellency
Я выражаю искреннюю
Mr.
признательность
Vorobyeva
его превосходительству господину Борода
for giving us the opportunity and entertain our request.
и
Special request
во
to
внимание
him
нашу особую просьбу
for handing over the 2 black box to the Malaysia. Our sincere request to Mr. Vorobyeva to have the black box, these 2 black box, is not actually to blame each other. We want the honor because it's a property of Malaysia. Again, I would like to thank
еще раз
so much to His Excellency Mr. Vorobyeva
выразить свою
for giving us
благодарность господину
this
Бородаеву
honor.
за
Thank you very much.
Мохаммед Сакри Совета национальной безопасности Малайзии.
We will send our teams to go to the site as what that has been said by Mr. Vorobyeva.
Мы направили своих
And we thank very
представителей
much
на
for his cooperation with us.
события.
So how many teams will you send?
Основная
I'm
благодарность
not
должна быть
sure
выражена
because
господину
a lot
Бородаеву
of things to be done. And of course, our priority first is for the body to be sent to the
Нашей основной задачей является переправка тел
Amsterdam.
погибших в
Okay?
Амстердам.
Our priority now is first is the body, second is the black box.
В настоящий момент у нас 3 задачи. Это переправка тел погибших, переправка черных.
Mr. Borobyeva, when did you last talk to Mr. Putin?
Возможно, мне придется вам сказать, что никогда не говорил. Хотя с удовольствием бы, конечно, это проделал. Даже в ближайшее время.
В 7 вечера поезд прибыл в Донецк.
Нет, он в 7 вечера тронулся от Терезы и прибыл в Донецк примерно в 11 часов вечера, может быть, чуть позже.
То есть события сегодняшнего утра в Донецке и поезд с телами погибших никак не связаны?
Нет, напрямую они не связаны, хотя мы считаем, что сегодняшняя попытка танковой атаки на Донецк вполне может быть связана с нежеланием киевской власти как-то дать возможность экспертам проехать в Донецк и работать на месте аварии.
Господин полковник, скажите, пожалуйста, по первому визуальному впечатлению, кто-то может сказать, в каком состоянии черные вещи?
The condition of the black boxes.
I can see that the black box is intact, even though a little bit damaged. Okay? Thank you so much.
Спасибо.
Thank you.
Извините, сколько времени займет поездка?
So what happens now? That Malaysian delegation goes to a train that pulled into Donetsk a couple of hours ago. Now they'll take those black boxes. Also aboard this train are the bodies of some 200 of the victims from the accident. They are going to travel north to the Ukrainian city of Kharkiv, and in doing so they will take this very precious cargo really beyond the reach of the rebel forces for the first time.
Do we know where the train carrying the victims now currently is?
We believe it is leaving from here locally in Donetsk. Now, that gets a little complicated, right, because we were just hearing some shelling just now, which is not unusual here. We believe it has started. We have no final word on that yet, but the signs there are good. That's a step in the right direction.
Well, we've been down to the railway station where we're told this convoy of trains will eventually arrive. We understand that just in the last few hours, about 3:10 local time, it pulled out of Donetsk, the separatist stronghold here, bound for Dnipropetrovsk Petrovsk before then turning direction and heading towards where we are in Kharkiv. A different route than originally planned, perhaps some concerns on the safety of travelling more directly, but we don't know precisely when it will arrive here. I think a good 7 or 8 hours drive there along those railway tracks, if in fact those tracks are all passable. When it finally arrives here at the railway station, it will be met by a number of Dutch experts we've seen coming into the airport here.
The rebels do not possess any defense systems that are capable of shooting a plane at the altitude of 10 kilometers. They do not have this kind of systems. Russia has never supplied this kind of systems to the rebels or to whoever in this area. On the contrary, Ukrainian side do possess this kind of systems, the book systems, and according to the data of our Ministry of Defense, they have been deployed in the area. For what reasons, we do not know.
How is it possible, Ambassador, that you do not know in a region which is so closely monitored that Russia cannot know what happened? Do you know what happened?
The USA claim that they have evidence of what happened. Where is this evidence? Except for the registered telephone conversation, which has already been proven a fake.
Do you have evidence, Ambassador? That is my question.
I
not
don't
whether
have.
the US.
I don't have any
Does the Russian government know what happened?
Why would we want to have international investigation? I think that's the reason why we want to have a clear evidence of what happened.
The audio that they intercepted of the rebels, if I'm not mistaken, you said that they are fake. Can I confirm that?
Yes, it is a fake. It has been analyzed by experts, and it's a compilation of recordings, audio recordings from different period of times. Some of these pieces of conversations were recorded even before the 17th of July. So that is a fake.
We demand and we would like to know what happened to the plane. I think we have enough. For the last 4 months, we have lost one plane, MH17, and today we lost MH17. So we would like to know who is responsible for that shooting of the plane. We are not accusing the Russians, neither we are accusing the Ukraine. Like what the Honorable Prime Minister has said, he has actually secured for the black box to be returned back, as evident this morning.
Yes, of course we are angry, because we want to know, we want justice.
Уважаемые коллеги, депутаты, уважаемые украинцы, 25 мая страна проголосовала, беспрецедентное голосование, огромное количество голосов получил президент. Люди голосовали за мир. Люди надеялись на то, что закончится война. Сегодня окончательно их надежды рухнули. Сегодня мы поняли о том, что 15 шагов по плану по восстановлению мира провалены. Сегодня мы поняли, что власть будет продолжать убивать украинцев. Сегодня
Я прошу відключити мікрофон народного депутата. Я прошу п'яту колону, яка працює на президента Путіна, який веде війну проти нашої країни, припинити провокацію. Ми будемо видаляти вас з залу.
Шановні колеги, ви знаєте, тиждень тому я разом з іншими народними депутатами знаходилася в Слов'янську. В той час на площі перебували депутати від різних політичних сил, від «Свободи», від «Батьківщини». І там був і депутат Левченко. Так ось жителі Слов'янська його вигнали.
Колеги, я прошу успокоїтись, ми зараз поставимо на голосування питання щодо видалення з залу народного депутата Левченка. Прошу сісти на свої робочі місця. Колеги, я прошу.
Good morning. A very important Foreign Affairs Council this morning, which will of course begin with hearing particularly from our colleague from the Netherlands about the terrible tragedy that took place in Ukraine in the downing of the aircraft MH17 Malaysian Airlines. All of you have been following this awful tragedy unfolding, and our determination, and just reading through what the Security Council has decided in New York, our determination too to see proper access to the site so that loved ones can know that the bodies of their relatives and friends can be brought home and treated properly and respectfully. The investigation needs to take place too. All of the information that you've seen coming out of different sources needs to be verified, and we now need to look at the consequences for this. And we call on Russia to do its part in ensuring that the separatists really do engage with the monitors and engage with those who are trying to investigate the scene at the present time.
Do you expect the ministers today to approve new sanctions on Russia, and do you think now is the time to look at sanctions on sectors of the Russian economy?
Well, as you know, the European Council asked us to look at the legal base on which we're operating in order that we could potentially expand. And we've been asking ambassadors to now develop how they want to do that. So the politics of today will be, first of all, ensuring that we're working absolutely in step with particularly the Netherlands to make sure that everything we do fits into their needs to be able to sort out the problems on the ground immediately. And then to instruct ambassadors, instruct COREPER and the PSC, all of the usual ambassadorial teams, and myself in how we go forward. I think it's going to be a really strong debate, and I think there'll be a number of possibilities for how ministers decide in the end they want to go forward. But if I say to you, go forward, they will and must.
What we've been seeing, particularly since the end of June, since the European Council then, is a significant escalation of the supply of heavy weapons, tanks, missiles, rockets, fighters, to what is happening the pro-Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine. The shooting down of the Malaysian airliners is a consequence of this particular policy.
This meeting today is an opportunity for us to send a very clear signal to Russia. We're obviously pleased that there is movement now on repatriating the victims, pleased that there is some access being granted to the site, but we mustn't forget the overall context here. This terrible incident happened in the first place because of Russia's support to the separatists in eastern Ukraine, because of the flow of heavy weapons from Russia into eastern Ukraine, and we have to address that issue today, and I shall be urging my colleagues and our partners to send a very clear and strong signal to Russia today. The world has changed since the European Council last week. The events of last Thursday have changed public expectations on us, and we have to send a clear signal from our meeting today that we recognise that and that we are going to go further as a consequence of what has happened.
Антон Троиновский, газета Wall Street Journal. Еще поступил сегодня
Wall Street Journal, we also have the information that Ukrainian air forces have bombed the site in the vicinity of the city of Shakhtarsk, 30 kilometers away from the crash site of the Boeing. Can you comment on this? I don't know exactly about this, but if this is 30 kilometers from the site of the crash, I must tell you that the no combat action zone is 40 kilometers. So you can calculate for yourself. The radius is 20 kilometers. I'm in the zone without any combat action. The diameter is 40 kilometers, so the radius is 20.
This is a factory where they've brought the remains of many of the victims of flight MH17, which was shot down last week. They're being stored here temporarily before they're going to be shipped to the Netherlands, where they're going to be identified. There are forensic experts here from the Netherlands and from Malaysia.
Нормально. Знаю, знаете, в городе нема никого.
Here at the crash site of MH17, the clouds keep opening up and the rain is slowing but not stopping investigators who are finally on the ground from taking a look at the wreckage and see what answers are still available. We understand the Malaysian delegation, which received the flight data recorders from the local militia head last night, are actually on scene. We haven't seen them here yet, and if we do, we'll alert you to that. Vitaly Nayda, he is the head of informational security for Ukraine. Mr. Nayda, thank you for joining us this morning. So tell us, why is it that you believe you can prove that it was the militiamen, the rebels, who shot this plane out of the sky?
Well, the security service of Ukraine possess concrete evidence that Book M1 was deployed from the territory of Russian Federation to the territory of Ukraine illegally early in the morning, July 17th. It was deployed to the city Donetsk, and then something about 9 a.m. in the morning, it went back in the column, military column, jointly with the tanks and APCs towards city Torres direction. We obtained that phone interception legally according to the court's permission, and we already provided that phone interception to the investigators and to our international partners.
They say that the evidence you've provided of phone conversations and social media are fabricated, are fake. That's what the self-appointed prime minister says. And Russia says you had a warplane in the airspace at the same time. Is that true? Did you have a warplane, and is there any basis for the suggestion that you made this up?
I won't wait for another point of view from Russian media or Russian authorities. We didn't have any military plane at the scene at the moment, and we taped conversations between Russian GRU officer Igor Bezler reporting to his superior officer in Moscow using Russian phone number that his subordinates shot down the plane. We know for sure that several minutes before the missile was launched, there was a report to GRU officer Igor Bezler, and he was aware that the plane is coming. having in possession Russian origin Buk M1 military missile launch, they had to understand, they knew that the plane is coming with a constant speed in a constant direction, that they should know that it is not a military jet fighter and that should be a big civilian plane.
The idea of shared responsibility in this situation. Does Ukraine's government feel shared responsibility because of the ongoing conflict and what the militiamen say is constant attacks of eastern towns? Do you believe you share responsibility for creating an atmosphere of violence that led to the shooting down of the plane?
Not at all. I would like to stress everybody's opinion that here in Ukraine we do not have rebels and we do not have civil war. Right now we have mercenaries, we have terrorists that are sent from the territory of Russian Federation to Ukraine. And right now Russia provokes terrorism, Russia finances terrorist activity on the territory of Ukraine. Russian Federation provides weapons, ammunition, terrorists, machine guns, missile launchers, everything to the terrorists on the territory of Ukraine. So we do not share any responsibility of provoking the unstable situation in the eastern regions of Ukraine.
You know that countries are very worried about coming here because of the ongoing warfare. Given that, why did the Ukraine government decide to start shelling in the Donetsk region when you know the ceasefire is so fragile here, when you know peace is so fragile, and that we are waiting desperately for international experts to come? Why start shelling again during this period when we have to investigate?
You know, I'm not a part of the Ukrainian government, so I cannot give the comment to that question. Unfortunately, right now the territory is under the control of terrorists, and the Ukrainian government can hardly apply all measures to control the territory. It's only on the Russian side who has to give orders to terrorists to stop fighting, to cease fire, and to give international community, to give to everybody, to all those countries whose citizens died in that terrorist attack, to give a chance to get to the scene of the plane crash.
Last question, sir. Do you have any reason to believe, any intelligence developed, that will substantiate claims that the militiamen here, the locals, were looking through the crime scene to hide certain evidence, that they took the flight-of-date recorders for some bad reason? Do you have any reason of intelligence to back up any of those allegations?
Exactly. From the very first moment, we got intelligence that terrorists were given orders by the leaders of the terrorist groups there in the scene to hide all the evidence. We knew for sure from our sources that they tried to take some bodies on the heavy tracks and move them away. We are right now checking that information. We can't confirm it right now officially, but it's intelligence. We knew for sure that they were trying to get access directly to the black boxes of the plane, not to give a chance to Ukrainian authority or whatever else authority to get it, to get the access to the black box, and they were given orders to move it to separatist leaders.
Well, right now, Malaysian experts are in the field just up the road from me here, and they're looking at the site. The OSCE says that there are 3 teams at the site right now, and finally, really, it does begin to feel like a bit of a breakthrough after the long wait.
I'm here at one of the 8 crash scenes, the biggest one, and in fact, I'm standing just a few meters away from the tail section of the aircraft that came down, and just behind it are 3 representatives of Malaysian Airlines who just arrived to the site with us for the first time.
Are you being given free access to the site?
Well, depends how you define free access. There are understandably a lot of journalists here, and the security quality, if you can put it that way, is a bit different than yesterday when it was quite good. We have now brought 3 different groups of experts. The Ukrainian experts from day one. Yesterday, the Dutch forensic experts accompanied us. And today, 3 Malaysian experts have accompanied us. And they have gotten in and out of this area without much trouble at all.
They could smell the presence of death as they moved through the wreckage, and hear the rockets falling in the distance, and see the smoke from the strikes.
So at last, some air experts have arrived here at the scene, but there are only 3 of them to cover an area of 6 square miles, where there is a vast amount of wreckage scattered. A much bigger number of investigators will be needed if they're going to get to the truth of what happened to flight MH17.
Hello, I'm Mark Davis. Welcome to this special edition of Dateline live from Kiev. Reports are that the train has now arrived in the government-controlled area of Kharkiv after an 8-hour delay following fresh outbreaks of shelling between government and rebel forces. I spoke with Ukraine's Prime Minister Arseny Yatsenyuk just as the train was ready to leave the rebel areas.
Well, thanks for your time, sir. I greatly appreciate it. Why have the separatists been so belligerent, in your opinion? Is there a strategy at work here?
Let me start with the words of my deepest condolences to your nation, to your people. And we stand by Australian people. Ukrainians mourn and pray for all families who lost their beloved in this despicable act of violence. We launched an investigation, and the question you raised, frankly, has no answer.
Well,
I will try to answer.
Because the violence was one thing, but the extra trauma has been these days and days of bodies, people's families in the field.
They are just bastards. You can't name these beings as human beings.
You've been critical of Russia in the lead up to this, but in the post-crash period, could Russia have done more to allow the teams in? I mean, did they have any influence here?
Russia did nothing to allow rescue units and rescue teams to get to the crash site, to stop looting that these guerrillas did in the last few days,
Looting
to de-escalate.
Looting of the bodies or the possessions.
That's awful. That's disgusting and awful. I was shocked with this footage. But as Ukrainian emergency service approached the crash site and as we deployed 810 people, so we somehow calmed down the situation and took the control over the situation in this crash site area.
Well, the Russians, of course, have blamed you for escalating the tensions, in fact escalating the fighting that led to the crash itself. Is that an accurate description?
We have to operate and to manage only with the facts. The fact is that Russia supplied lethal weapon to Russian-led terrorists. The fact is that MH17 was downed or shot down by the anti-aircraft missile system surface-to-air. The fact is that this anti-aircraft missile system is Russian-made. The fact is that only well-trained agents can operate this system. The fact is that this system cannot work solemnly. It needs the special support from another radar systems, which we don't possess in Ukraine.
This is an international crime. This is the global threat. And we are to bring to justice everyone responsible, including those who are and were behind the scene, those who supplied the weapon, and those who trained these Russian-led guerrillas. And this is Russian Federation. We want a thorough international investigation.
What happens next? Is there likely to be an escalation of hostilities here?
This is the key priority for the entire globe. To stop this. To stop Russian invasion. And to contain Russia. Because you know what happened? MH17 is just the end of the story. But how it started? It started with an annexation of Crimea, with the grab of land of an independent country, with the violation of international law, with the violation of the UN Charter by P5 member, with sending troops and agents to Ukrainian territory, with the supplying weapon, with the conquering and invading of independent country, and with an idea of restoring the Soviet Union, launched by President Putin. As far as I see, this is his final goal, this is his ultimate goal. To recreate the Dark Empire. This is the global job and the duty of everyone in this world.
Well, strategically, this shooting...
To preserve peace and stability.
Shooting down of this plane is presumably a strategic mistake, to say the least, if Russia is involved in it, because the world now is paying attention in the Ukraine.
Not sure I can share your opinion of the strategic mistake.
You think...
This is the terrorist attack and this is the international crime. This is not the mistake. Ukrainian case or Ukrainian-Russia tension is one of the key threats to the global security. And we need to act in concert, the entire global community, to de-escalate the situation and to bring to justice those responsible for this escalation.
Well, finally, what do you anticipate? What do you think will happen next? What's the mood here amongst your government about what will happen next month?
My government will do everything for peace and stability.
It doesn't feel like what I hear. It doesn't feel like the mood here. There seems to be a lot of anger. There was a lot of trauma when the plane came down. Now there seems a lot of anger. Do you think there's going to be peace and stability, or do you think there's going to be more assaults?
But to get peace, you have to fight. This is the formula.
On that ominous note, thanks for your time.
Thank you, sir.
We are getting some breaking news from eastern Ukraine from one of our producers who is there at the crash site. He is reporting to us, Will Vernon, that he is hearing sustained rocket fire, possibly Grad rocket fire, that is quite audible in the distance as experts are carrying out their investigation in Gravova around the MH17 crash site. So we're now hearing this news of sustained rocket fire coming from the area. As soon as we have more for you, we will bring it to you. Well, in the last hour, the Dutch Prime Minister has been speaking about the situation in Ukraine. Mark Rutte said the Dutch would leave no stone unturned as they lead the investigation at the crash site. And he went on to say that the first plane with a number of victims on board should leave for Eindhoven tomorrow evening.
U weet, onze hoofdprioriteit is en blijft het terughalen.
You know, our main priority remains the return of all of our people.
In Kharkov vinden de voorbereidingen plaats.
In Kharkov there will be preparations so that the identification process in the Netherlands can be done as well as possible.
Zodra een aantal slachtoffers klaar is.
As soon as a number of victims is ready for transport, a plane will leave for Eindhoven. The hope and expectation is that tomorrow, at the end of the day, the first plane will leave for Eindhoven. The phased transport of bodies will continue until all remains on the train in Kharkov have arrived in the Netherlands. As soon as a plane has landed at the airport in Eindhoven, the victims will be transported to the military barracks near Hilversum. And as soon as a victim has been identified, the family will be notified first, nobody else. This could sometimes be fast, but it could also be weeks or months.
As far as we are concerned, something fundamental has changed since last Thursday. And as far as the Netherlands is concerned, all options are now on the table: economic, financial, and political.
Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги. Так вот, надеемся, что и наши национальные законные интересы будут учитываться, а спорные вопросы, которые, безусловно, всегда имеют место быть, всегда возникают, они будут решаться исключительно дипломатическим путем, путем переговоров. Никто не будет вмешиваться в наши внутренние дела. Однако сегодня в мире все чаще звучит язык ультиматумов и санкций. Само понятие государственного суверенитета размывается. Неугодные режимы, страны, которые проводят независимую политику или просто стоят на пути чьих-то интересов, дестабилизируются. Для этого в ход идут так называемые цветные революции, а если называть вещи своими именами, просто государственные перевороты, спровоцированные и финансируемые извне. Часто ставка делается на радикальные, националистические, а то и просто на неофашистские, фундаменталистские силы, так как это происходило во многих, к сожалению, странах постсоветского пространства, и то, что происходит сейчас на Украине, практически то же самое, то, что мы сейчас видим. Люди пришли к власти вооруженным антиконституционным путем. Да, после переворота провели выборы, но странным образом почему-то во главе государства опять оказались те, кто финансировал либо осуществлял этот переворот. А часть населения страны, которая не согласна с таким развитием событий, также силой пытаются подавить, без всякой попытки провести хоть какие-то переговоры. Перед Россией при этом чуть ли не ультиматумы выставляют. Или позвольте нам часть этого населения, которое и этнически, и культурно, исторически близка к России, уничтожить, или мы будем в отношении вас вводить какие-то санкции. Странная логика, и, конечно, она абсолютно неприемлема. Что касается, кстати, событий, которые связаны с ужасной трагедией, произошедшей в небе над Донецком. Конечно, мы еще раз выражаем соболезнования всем семьям погибших. Конечно, это ужасная трагедия. Россия все, что от нее зависит, будет делать для полноценного, всестороннего, глубокого и транспарентного расследования. Нас призывают оказать воздействие на ополчение Юго-Востока. Все, что в наших силах, повторяю, мы, конечно, будем делать, но этого совершенно недостаточно. Вчера, когда ополченцы передавали так называемые черные ящики, вооруженные силы Украины устроили танковую атаку на город Донецк. Танки прорывались к железнодорожному вокзалу. Он был обстрелян. Международные специалисты, которые приехали на место трагедии, голову не могли высунуть. Ополченцы же не сами себя обстреливают. Нужно в конце концов призвать и киевские власти к соблюдению элементарных норм порядочности, ввести хотя бы на какое-то короткое время для расследования прекращения огня. Разумеется, мы будем делать все для того, чтобы расследование было полным. Именно поэтому Россия поддержала предложенную Австралией резолюцию Совета Безопасности. Будем и дальше в контакте со всеми партнерами решать задачи, стоящие по полному всестороннему расследованию. Но если вернуться к сценариям подобного рода в целом, как я уже сказал, то это, безусловно, абсолютно неприемлемо и контрпродуктивно. Это разрушает современный миропорядок. Безусловно, в лоб подобные методы в отношении России не пройдут. Важнейшим гарантом суверенитета и территориальной целостности России остаются наши вооруженные силы. Мы будем адекватно и соразмерно реагировать на приближение военной инфраструктуры НАТО к нашим границам. Не оставим без внимания развертывания глобальной противоракетной обороны и наращивания запасов стратегического неядерного высокоточного оружия.
We're live at the crash site of MH17 in eastern Ukraine. The two sides are actively fighting right now within 10 kilometers. We've been hearing very heavy artillery shelling. That is a reminder of the conflict that has to be resolved here. And then behind us, the crash site itself a reminder of how much there is still to do and how time is of the essence. So what do we do to get this investigated? What do we do to stop the conflict? Can we do anything? Few people better to have this discussion with than Madeleine Albright, former Secretary of State, former Ambassador to the UN. Madam Secretary, you could not be better credentialed to have this discussion. Thank you for joining us. Let's begin with the specific tragedy. MH17 had no role in this conflict, was certainly brought down, crashed in the middle of a battlefield. What can be done to get more international experts on the ground to investigate before any chance of making a strong case for what happened disappears?
I think that what has to happen is the investigators do have to get in there as quickly as possible. The Security Council has passed a resolution to that effect. We need to make available all the information that we have on all of this and keep pushing. And then also there has to be additional action by the Europeans who are meeting today in terms of raising the level of sanctions and matching those that President Obama has already put on. I do think that there needs to be a larger international presence there. Unfortunately, we have too much knowledge of things like this. Some of the massacres that took place during the war in the Balkans, where we were, in fact, able to get agreement to be able to go in and make sure that these horrible fields are properly guarded. And I think that there does have to be additional pressure. And the UN, as I said, does have a Security Council resolution. I do think it would be important to get some international forces in there in order to make sure that this tragic field is not desecrated even further. But the issues here are that a lot of it, as you have reported, has already disappeared. It'll be interesting to see what the black boxes say, but the bottom line is I do think that the U.S. needs to publicly present the information that we have. And frankly, I did this during the tragedy in Srebrenica. I brought in information to the Security Council and showed it. The same thing when the Cubans shot down the unarmed Cuban-American planes. We have to provide the information so that Putin's lies are not the ones that are dominating the propaganda.
We are in a situation having crossed point of no return. Because for many also here, it's my impression, it was like trying to somehow to watch what was going on in Ukraine from a sort of window, trying to get the flavor, trying to get the feeling what was going on. Now it's like a stone, you know, who broke the window. And it's not just the feeling of crisis is there. The crisis is there. The crisis is with you. It's not the point for the Eastern Ukraine. It's not the point for Ukraine. It's the point for the whole Europe. Now we are in a completely different dimension. There were someone who probably thought we could freeze the conflict, and after that we could easily deal with another frozen conflict. No chance for that. No more. We are in a completely different mentality and a completely different development. It was a sort of different bits of terminology, talking about separatists, talking about terrorists. Some, you know, was talking about self-defense people. Now, after this strategy, we all understand that we deal with clearly with Russian-backed terrorists, and it's indeed a very tragic moment. And we've been trying to do our best. We've been trying to negotiate round the clock, you know, not directly, but somehow through the trilateral contact group with the terrorists on site, in order to carry out full, transparent and open investigation, in order to recover all the bodies in a decent and human way, and not the way how the terrorists have been dealing with them, simply dragging it away. And it's about incorporating our partners and friends. And because of that, we took a decision about our Dutch friends to lead the investigation. We took a number of decisions which were difficult to perform in the Ukrainian legal system in order to provide for a quickest recovery of the borders, and a number of other decisions. And we are fully committed to that also in the future. So for us, it's about clear result. It's about clear result of this investigation, but it's also about clear commitment. For the European Union, it's now about success of Ukraine, and it's about redefining the tactics and strategy towards the Eastern Partnership and towards Russia.
Завантаження тіл до цього потягу. Зараз потрібно переводити одразу. Yes? Прошу.
Dear colleagues, I'm very sorry for being late today, and we would like to inform you that today about 12 o'clock a train with bodies came already to Kharkiv. Unfortunately, it takes a lot of time for this train to get from the place of airplane crash to Kharkiv due to obstacles created by separatists. But now this train is already here, and on the basis of Malsheva territory, we have organized all needed infrastructure to organize work with bodies and to prepare them for transfer to Netherlands. In the train, according to preliminary information, there are 282 bodies and 87 parts of bodies, and we suppose that these are parts of about 16 people. But we have to emphasize once again that this is preliminary information. Exact information we could give you only after starting of work of international experts. Then this matter will be open. And we need to say once again that as for the place, the location where this crash has happened, right now we don't have access to that place, so we hope that as soon as we get it, we could provide appropriate investigation.
So should the side be put in the control of international forces? If neither side in this country can actually control it at the moment, doesn't the side need to be protected? And the only way to do that is to put international forces in it.
The whole world already knows that now in Ukraine we have military operation hostilities, and we think that the whole world and Ukraine, we need to unite all our facilities to stop these military operations and bring peace in Ukrainian territory.
Here in eastern Ukraine, not too long ago, not too far away, less than 10 kilometers, very heavy shelling going on. We're not sure if it was rockets or just heavy artillery, but the two sides are fighting, and it's close, and that is going to hamper efforts for the Malaysians and the Dutch to monitor the situation and finally start collecting some facts on the ground. So let's go to Barbara Starr. She's at the Pentagon with more intelligence about what may have happened that sent this plane crashing into a battlefield. Barbara.
Good morning, Chris. We are now getting the first look, the first map provided by the U.S. government of what it says was the trajectory of the missile and the crash of Flight 17. I want to put this up on the screen for everyone to have a good, long, hard look at. What you see here is what the U.S. says was the trajectory of this event, overlaid onto commercially available imagery, satellite imagery. They're not going to give us the classified imagery, but let's take a look. What you see is the flight path coming to the southeast from the north, traveling southeast is that yellow line of Flight 17. Coming up from the south, from a town in Ukraine, you see the trajectory of the missile. You then see, if we can hone in on that a little bit more to the center of your screen, you see the point of impact. You then see where the plane fell to the ground. What the U.S. says is this is the radar and satellite analysis of the trajectory of the flight of the plane, the flight of the missile, the explosion, and then pretty much right center in your screen, the point at which it fell to the ground. This is based on very classified, very high-tech intelligence analysis. This is the U.S. View of what happened. Of course, Chris, it's really what you just said. It does not tell us who pulled the trigger, who pushed the launch button. That is the big unanswered question. And in talking to our sources, what we're finding is that's a question that may be the most difficult to answer. Many of the separatists, as we know, hold Russian citizenship. The U.S. believes many of them have traveled across that nearby border into Russia to get training on surface-to-air missiles. But the big question is, were there Russian military personnel at that moment, at that place you see on the map? Did they push the launch button? Were they involved in the launch? That's still very much the unanswered question. Chris?
All right, Barbara, thank you very much for the reporting and advancing the information involved. Now let's figure out what it means. Let's bring in Senator John McCain. Senator, thank you for joining us on New Day as always. As you know, I'm in eastern Ukraine, so we have what's called intelligence. It seems highly suggestive. The point of analysis here is to say if it's possible that Russia was involved. But let me suggest this, Senator. Why do they have to be involved? These missile systems have been in and around the Soviet bloc area in Ukraine since the 70s. There are plenty of gray-haired warriors still in place here who know how they work, who understand them, who could operate them. Is there a chance that Russia had no contemporary involvement, did nothing right now?
That's impossible, Chris, because we all know that the separatists are Russians and the Russians are separatists. We know they intercepted communications. We know that it takes training in order to operate this particular system. And we know that it was Russia that has caused this whole turmoil in eastern Ukraine to start with. So did a Russian KGB or GRU actually push the button? I think that's really nice to know. But the fact is that this is the work of Vladimir Putin, who caused the unrest in eastern Ukraine, who annexed Crimea, who is the cause of all this. And whether it was actually a Russian or not, frankly, is not too vital in our deciding that Vladimir Putin is a KGB colonel that is an international pariah, in my view, and should be treated as such.
Сушка украинская, город Первомайск, Луганской области. 2 часа 50 минут. Летит сирена на заводе Карла Маркса. Были взрывы, 3-й раз заход делает, по ней отрабатывают. Потеряла. Слышные звуки, по ней стреляют. Дядя Вов, пропустите. Скрылась из вида. Сейчас опять будет разворачиваться, наверное, на 4-й заход.
Стоят какие-то шики.
Не знаю, но работают по сушке хорошо. Громыхает.
Ля! Бабушка с дома! Горе, поди!
Вот так его, пидораса, сука.
Поздненько вышло, поздненько.
Да ну, поздненько. У меня там 5-й этаж, я там вообще не знала, в какой угол прятаться.
Ой, это вообще страшно. Ох, и дрожал бы дом.
Сегодня какой? 22 у нас. 22 июля 1914 года. Город Луганск, квартал Комарова, 32-й дом. Вот человек лежит, да.
Это дедушка-пенсионер. Пожилой человек. Сходил дедушка за булочкой хлеба. Порошенко, ты убийца и тварь. Дом 30. Квартал Комарова. Попадание. Еще один пожилой человек.
Блядь, я, сука.
Сука. Тут двое погибших, да? Двое, да?
Трое,
Третьего увезли.
Третий с той стороны был.
Да, с той стороны, третий.
Один раненый. Одного раненого самого первого везли. Трое, еще один везли.
А где еще попадание было?
На следующем доме еще в крышу въебали.
И все, да? 3 попадания получается. 3
попадания.
А 4-е? Получается 1 и там 2.
2 там.
А говорят, еще возле школы где-то легло.
Да.
Возле 52-й школы. Дом 31.
Девочка из газом, что-то ж нет, это печка все, и этот счетчик, пожалуйста, позаботьтесь.
Квартал Комарова, квартира, дом 32А.
48.
48.
5-й этаж.
5-й этаж. Снаряд попал прямо в крышу на кухню.
Вчера его и увезли.
А он провалился, да? Валялся.
Можно я
телевизор стоял, тумбочка была, и он так мягенько упал, тряпки, и все. Не дай бог, если взорвался, тут бы никого не...
Короче, он не взорвался, просто провалился, да, и все.
Да, он прямо провалился и все.
Ну да, но получается, что не пробил только. Да, если взорвался, то было.
Да, вы что, не я и...
А тут кто-то лежал, наверное, да?
Я тут и живу.
Не, лежали, наверное, в это время, да?
Нет, я не лежала. Я вроде, мне кажется, я собиралась это...
Выходить.
Сюда и проходить идти. А потом не поняла.
Ну да.
Потемнело сразу.
Да, повезло, что не взорвалось.
Кухню посмотрю. Снаряд попал, но не взорвался, да?
Да,
Поэтому...
самое главное. Да вы что?
Там оно видно, что если взорвался, только осколков было.
Да.
Бабушка здесь лежала, это ее спасло.
И эта батарею нарушилась. Теперь что ж я буду делать?
Раз, два, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12. 4.
Ой, да слава Богу, хоть Бог целое.
Ну, он не взорвался, пробил это.
Да.
Если по сколке, то тут бы...
Да. Он бы пошел и этот, четвертый.
Тут бы снесло несколько квартир.
Да, получается,
Ну,
полностью
плита, да,
менять.
плиту поменять бы было.
Ой, ну пожалуйста, ребята, ну помогите.
Мы ж только устанавливаем.
Бабуль, надо бабулечке кушать принести.
Принесите, если что, я ж одна.
Саш, пошли.
А электричество у вас есть?
Нет, и он включила этот чайник.
А что, холодильник-то работает?
Ну, холодильник работает.
Ну, значит, электричество есть.
А электричество есть, а также печки у меня нет уж ничего. Только вот самовар.
Бабулечка, ну я к вам попозже приду, принесу что-нибудь покушать, хорошо?
Пожалуйста. Такое что-нибудь реденькое, горяченькое.
Ну, это надо приготовить, хорошо.
А, ну ладно, что принесете, спасибо.
Я сама, я на Комарова живу, я вчера убежала, когда бомбежка началась. А сейчас пришла, думаю, какие вещи возьму.
Знаете, говоришь, сына моему захватила, эту артерию вывернула, и он кровь потеряла, сейчас лежит в реанимации, не приходит в себя, не дышит, ничего, вот это надели на небо, говорят. Ну что ж я одна.
А в какой больнице?
Да?
В какой больнице?
В областной, где вот реанимация делают вот это.
Угу. Луганская областная, да?
Ага. Ну какое Господи.
Бабулечка, держитесь. Как вас зовут?
А?
Как вас зовут?
Елена.
А фамилия?
Соломенцева.
Соломенцева Елена.
Пожалуйста, зайдите, не оставьте меня в беде. Ну помогите, я уже не могу, и давление, я все же трусит меня, я не знаю. Ой, Боже,
держитесь.
Да еще и с сыном. Такой золотой, такой, видите, ремонт делал. Но я не знаю, зачем же мы его забрали, Господи. Такой же парень. Да, мамочка, я никогда не брошу. Ну ты же у меня одна, и продукты мне принесете, звоните, спрашиваете, работаете. Ну зачем это случилось такое? Ой, беда. Ну извините меня, пожалуйста. Ой.
Держитесь, я скоро зайду к вам. Держитесь.
Давайте. Ой, ой.
В связи со сложившейся оперативной обстановкой и сдачей мозговым городов Лисичанск и Северодонецк, а также сложной критической гуманитарной ситуацией в Луганске, вызванной его блокадой, я поставил задачу Министерству обороны и всем воинским формированиям армии Луганской Народной Республики начать контрнаступление. Его цели: первое – разблокирование Луганска. Второе – оказание помощи подразделениям, отказавшимся подчиниться и удерживающих позиции в Лисичанске и Северодонецке с целью разблокирования этих городов. Приказ должен быть выполнен в кратчайшие сроки.
Какова ситуация, собственно, сейчас вокруг Луганска? То есть опровергните всякие мифы. Окружен ли Луганск полностью?
Нет, Луганск полностью не окружен. Сегодня ночью был нанесен большой урон численности и техники противника. Вот. Был хороший обстрел, были хорошие атаки. Вот. Противник, как вы видите, сейчас практически не обстреливает. Ну, так.
Осталось для беженцев еще пути от выхода из города? Какие, в России, в первую очередь, конечно.
С какого города?
С Луганска.
С Луганска, естественно.
То есть через Краснодон, да?
Да, через Краснодон и Зварино.
А железнодорожные сообщения еще?
Железнодорожные сообщения еще пока функционируют.
Какова ситуация в районе Георгиевского моста и вышла ли группировка украинских войск из аэропорта?
Нет, из аэропорта группировка еще не вышла, но в ближайшее время, я вас уверяю, с аэропортом будет покончено, как таковым.
А на чем базируется такая уверенность?
На основании того, какие у нас силы сейчас.
То есть это реально?
Это реально, да. Вот я думаю, что за эти 3 дня мы справимся не только с диверсионными группами, но и с группировкой, которая стоит вокруг города.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues.
What is the situation with Brigade 24? They are near Zelenopilla. Have you managed to deliver food to that place? How many people are there? I will not even tell you the coordinates where they are located. They have everything in order to oppose. They do have all the equipment, engineering equipment, everything, what they need to exercise their military task. They give the opportunity for other units to make the ring narrower around the terrorists. Those guys who are defending there, they give the chance to the forces who are offending, who are in offense from the west to the east to execute their task and to get rid of the terrorists. It's difficult for everyone, for those who are in defense and for those who are in offense.
Ukraine's most blunt accusation yet against Russia. CNN's Kian Law spoke to Ukraine's intelligence chief, who raised eyebrows with this exchange.
This wasn't a drunk rebel sitting on top of the missile.
No.
You believe that was a Russian?
Absolutely.
A Russian-trained?
A Russian-trained, well-equipped, well-educated officer.
Who pushed that button?
Who pushed that button.
And do you think at this
Deliberately.
moment... Deliberately.
Exactly.
Wow, deliberately. CNN's Kian Law is in Kiev. She joins us with more of that interview. What else did he say?
Well, it's a very bold accusation because what he's saying is it's not pro-Russian separatists, but it is a Russian officer himself who Ukrainian intelligence is suggesting is the one who pressed that button launching the missile. What he also adds is that intelligence, some unreleased audio recordings of these separatists talking, that it suggests that they should have known what they were launching that missile and what the direct hit would be. Here's what he says.
Those conversations say what again?
That the plane is coming and they have to be ready.
Did they know what the plane was?
The answer to this question would be given during the investigation. That they knew that the plane is coming. What kind of plane? Probably they knew, probably they don't. Because if they possess this kind of military equipment, like Buk M1 automatic missile launcher, they should knew that the plane is not a military plane. It's a big target coming with constant speed, in constant direction. They should analyze and they should knew that it was a civilian plane.
He says this image shows a truck with a blue stripe carrying the missiles, known as the Buk M1, the day of the plane crash. Hours after Flight 17 was shot out of the sky, intelligence images show what he says is the same truck crossing into Russia, one missile missing.
They are trying to get these vehicles out of Ukraine.
Out of Ukraine.
To cover up the crime.
Exactly.
When you hear the Russians say that they didn't do it, what's your immediate reaction?
It's a lie. It's a total constant lie and propaganda.
Deeply saddened by the downing of the Malaysian airliner in eastern Ukraine last Thursday, EU Foreign Affairs ministers meeting today in Brussels welcomed the unanimous adoption of the UN Security Council resolution. They asked separatist groups to ensure full and immediate access to the crash site so that international investigators can proceed with the identification and repatriation of victims and provide answers to allow those responsible to be brought to justice.
We today decided to accelerate the preparation of targeted measures agreed at the summit last week, in particular to put in place very quickly a list of entities and people, including from Russia, under the new enhanced criteria, and to expand the restrictive measures to target individuals or companies who actively benefit from support of the Russian decision-makers responsible for the annexation of Crimea or the destabilization of eastern Ukraine. We're also ready to introduce without delay a package of further significant restrictive measures if we don't see full and immediate cooperation. We have asked the Commission and External Action Service to prevent proposals for action, including on access to capital markets, defence, dual-use goods and sensitive technologies, including in the energy sector. These proposals will be presented on Thursday.
Позиция, вот у нас все движение техники противника в сторону Луганска, Донецка, оно происходило здесь, с этой позиции. Вот у нас она KOZHEVNYA, вот переправа в этом направлении. То есть это наша главная задача.
То есть нужно разрезать их коммуникации и освободить нам коридоры, правильно?
Не то, что коридор освободить, самое главное просто навести порядок, чтобы у нас было меньше кровопролития. То есть нужно просто прекратить, чтобы меньше бомбили городами мирных жителей, города Луганск. Тот же Славянского, что превратили. Нам нужно прекратить поставку этой техники ударной туда, потому что они воюют не по правилам воинского искусства, они просто бомбят мирных жителей. То есть в открытом бою, вот они не более, вы видите, не более, они выходят в открытый бой, они только воюют по правилам американских инструкторов, то есть они просто долбят всеми видами артиллерийского огня. Есть такой так называемый здесь арабский полковник, который вот все это фортификационные сооружения артиллерийские, минометные, дальняя тяжелая артиллерия, он выводит здесь, по этому периметру, и огонь, радиус действия 10 километров, друг друга перекрывают они. То есть вот такая вот сила. Сейчас на этапе мало-мало немножко их тут подшерстили чуть-чуть, поэтому более-менее у нас поспокойнее.
То есть вы согласны с тем, что под видом военных действий они просто осуществляют геноцид, как считают наши
Я считаю, что, во-первых, мы даже стараемся не трогать молодежь, которая даже не понимает, в какие боевые действия она попала. Их отправляют на учения якобы, колонны сопровождать машин. И эти ребята гибнут здесь, не понимая даже за что и откуда идет огонь. А наемники, сейчас с Польши колонна идет, наемники, арабские наемники здесь, мы слышим эту речь. По большому счету против нас воюют иностранные наемники.
А это правда то, что они уже идут под флагами НАТО? Есть такая информация?
Ну, я не видел, сказать не могу, врать не буду. Я знаю точно, что в бою мы слышали разговор арабской речи. Мы видели здесь негров. То есть наша разведка докладывает, что есть негры здесь. Поэтому против нас воюют регулярные армии, скажем так, под прикрытием частной военной компании. То есть это профессиональные военные.
По сути, мы уже ведем войну с НАТО.
Ну, по сути, практически получается, да. Потому что, в общем-то, славянам воевать друг с другом очень тяжело и неправильно. Часть фашистующих настроенных, тех, которые на самом деле хотят крови, они это провоцируют все, они держат этих молодых ребят в кольце, то есть там угрожают родителям, матерям, поэтому ребята, они вынуждены браться за оружие и воевать. А что
Спасибо вам.
У меня в руках сигнальная ракетница, это будет команда к бою.
По зеленке кто-то бродит.
По зеленке бродит. Ким! Как? Мираж! Как АГСы? Отработали все? АГСы, все, к бою! Пошли! Внимание по колонне! Братцы, с Богом! БТР, смотрите внимательно, переход ищите! Чтобы не заблудился танкист, хорошо?
С Богом. Есть. Атака началась. Так, Божьей помощи и победы нашим ребятам.
Это куда? Богом, братцы!
Военная техника Народной Республики Донецкой, Новороссии идет в атаку. С Богом, ребята! С Богом! Пошли, молодцы, пошли. Бой. Горит пшеница. О! Так, наши идут на позицию под минометным обстрелом. А вот укры кладут мины. Пошел наш аппарат снова на позиции. Бой с украми продолжается. Очищаем от них границу Донецкой Народной Республики Российской Федерации. Вот бронетехника Донецкой Республики, Новороссии идет на подкрепление к своим. Там за зеленкой поле. Поле простреливается украинскими минами и артиллерией, а наши идут к своим. Так.
Что делать, понимаешь? Откуда мы не занимаем оборону?
Это что?
Градовские осколки. Вот выстрел от града не разорвало, а остатки. Жопу вырвало.
Всем тем, кто не согласен с киевской политикой. Вот, смотрите, сгущаются тучи. Утро начиналось солнечно и ясно, а теперь движется гроза как раз к востоку.
Вон за бугром уже Россия. Сейчас не видно, за дымом. Там церковь. Так что очень близко. Где-то порядка 7,5 километров.
KOZHEVNYA это последний населенный пункт, да?
Да, KOZHEVNYKA уже последний населенный пункт. Последняя переправа перед Россией. Вон украинский терминал на бугру. Он еле виден.
Да, здесь в районе Димитровки работало 8 украинских танков. 6 с одной стороны, 2 с другой. Один подбили, они отползли сейчас. Вот только что доложил командир расчета Птурса. Так, музыка войны.
Вот у нас такое вот бомбоубежище. Заходите, смотрите.
Это что?
Здравствуйте. Я корреспондент.
Ага, этот как его?
Вот,
Очень приятно.
Хочу иностранным гражданам нашего
Life News.
убежище показать.
Иногда бывает Life News, иногда, но большинство Россия Today. Здравствуйте. Как дела?
Здравствуйте. Да как дела? Сидим вот тут, ждем опять сюрпризов сверху.
Говорят, снова бомбить будут.
Ты здесь сколько времени уже провел здесь?
Вот, да, мы тут уже, считай, ночуем. Вчера ночевали целый день.
2 дня до этого были.
О, вот наше бомбоубежище. Да, вот видите, как мы тут живем.
Люди уже неделями он ночует там.
Вот, запас воды, на первое время.
А как настроено?
Ну да, ужасное настроение. Настроение ожидания смерти. Каждый день живешь и смерть ждешь. Настроение.
Страхе живем. Ну какое настроение?
Страшно.
Да? Когда градами смертью расстреливают.
Мальчик, расскажи, почему вы здесь? Что случилось?
Потому что боим бомбежки, боимся, скажи. Сейчас начнут стрелять и убивать.
Вчера еле, скажи, спасли из-под
Мы
бомбежки.
как бежали тут, еле забежали сюда.
Взрывной волной позакидывал подвал нас.
Боится, страшно. Вчера как дала возле подъезда, нас тут повыносило всех. Ужасно, страшно и бьет.
Ну что это, у нас есть дома, а мы живем в подвале. Это можно?
А что вы будете, я как понимаю, ваш квартире уже разоружение, как вы будете жить сейчас дальше?
Не знаю.
Мы хотим, чтобы быстрее все закончилось, чтобы мы жили нормально.
Мы живем только лишь бы выжить. А там уже посмотрим, как будет дальше.
А кто вы считаете, вам стрелял, обстрелял?
Какая-то установка, кто? Мы же не видим, откуда они стреляют.
Говорят, с Курахова.
Говорят, что с Курахова, говорят, с Антоновки, говорят, с Максимилиана.
Наемники,
со всех сторон.
и...
Бьют, обстреливают нас градами, ураганами.
Это идет на самоуничтожение мирного населения.
Свой президент и своих граждан Украины уничтожают. В самом настоящем сейчас убивают.
У них задача сейчас
Они спрашивают, нам говорят ополченцы, ребята, скрывайтесь. И мы то по подвалам текаем сразу. Если бы они предупреждают нас, и мы то выживаем. А так уже, наверное, жертв много было.
Кто может вы помогает сейчас?
Ополченцы нам помогают, они ходят, нас оповещают, чтобы мы прятались. Да, гуманитарную помощь давали.
Медикаменты помогают.
Медикаменты старым пожилым людям дают. Они помогают.
А сейчас тоже в этом деле связь это EU и США, как вы относитесь их присоединялись
к ним, как мы относимся
к этой ситуации?
Мы хотим, чтобы они почувствовали тоже, что чувствуют наши дети и старики. Мы к ним не относимся. Не дай Бог, чтобы мы хотим, чтобы они нас поняли.
Да,
что
они
мы здесь люди,
делают,
они какие-нибудь выродки, как нас называют.
То, что сейчас происходит, это благодаря Америке.
Объясни, пожалуйста, твою жизнь 6 месяцев назад. Как это было? Или года назад, прошлым летом?
Мы никогда не думали.
Мы не думали, что нас будут убивать
такое
здесь.
Будет.
Что наших детей будут, что наши дети будут за 40 минут собираться и выскакивать с квартиры. За 40 секунд.
И знать, как установка град работает, а как гаубицы.
Как надо текать и куда надо текать.
Не только град и смерть, и ураган уже он на кругу, вот такие баллонки.
Нам он 3 штуки закинули, одну здесь закинули.
Вы дальше не ходили еще?
Нет, еще так.
Сзади он дома.
Там у нас еще школу разбомбили.
I do have one statement quickly at the top. As you know, some of your colleagues who are in the in-town travel pool today are not here right now. They're with the president who is visiting the embassy of the Netherlands here in Washington, D.C. to sign a condolence book honoring those who were lost in the tragic shoot-down of Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 in Ukraine. There is a lot of evidence that's already been marshaled.
Is it a circumstantial case at this point?
Well,
to use a legal term.
there will be a role for a more formal intelligence assessment to be presented. I do expect that you'll hear from intel officials later today who will have some more data to present and some more evidence to indicate, I guess, some more evidence to educate you about what we know so far about that situation. But I will leave specific intelligence assessments to them. They're the experts who can analyze this data and can be more effective in drawing a more conclusive case, but I will leave that to them.
Mr. President, Dutch television, do you have any message for the Dutch people?
Obviously, we're all heartbroken by what's happened. This is not to me to extend on behalf of all the American people our deepest condolences over the loss of family and friends, to express our solidarity with the people of the Netherlands with whom we've been friends and have the deepest ties for centuries, and to assure the Dutch people that we will work with them to make sure that loved ones are recovered, that a proper investigation is conducted, and that ultimately justice is done.
Thank you.
The first plane will take off tomorrow, and we will continue until the last victim is identified and brought home. As far as we know at this moment, we are talking about 200, and that is for sure 200 victims, which means that there are probably remains left in the area where this disaster took place. Our first goal is the identification of the victims. The trains are loaded with remains of people. They are covered in bags. The identification will take place in Holland, so we have to put the remains in coffins to make them ready for transport. The mission will be completed when the last remain of the victims have left this country.
Vast amount of personal belongings of passengers have been removed from the scene. We have to say as well that we've observed still the existence of smaller body parts on this site. Going back to the main site, again where the tail fin is, the cone section, rear cone section, and the scorched earth section with the wings, the undercarriage, the fuel tanks, we've noticed marked changes there as well. The Malaysians have expressed gratitude for the access they received today. They were quite happy with it. In fact, they said they felt quite protected. They have also said that they have not seen any evidence of parts, at least major parts, missing from any of the crash sites we visited today. Where the wings came down, there is a part of the fuselage that has been propped up, and it wasn't that way before. And I'll also tell you that the Malaysian experts, they observed that the heat from the impact was so intense that it actually melted the wings. In the past few days, in fact, from the moment we arrived on the site, we've taken hundreds, probably thousands of photographs of debris, of the general kind of environment. And we will be sharing those with the authorities and with our Malaysian friends, because they're very eager also to compare what the site looked like immediately in the immediate aftermath of the crash and what it looks like now. On the remains, up until yesterday, a few hours before the train left, we did observe still active collection of. We didn't see the bodies being put in the bags, but These were heavy bags, and then we saw remains put in smaller bags and put on the lorry before it went to the train station. In terms of, we have not observed parts of the aircraft being moved off the site, but again, I'll repeat that we did observe changes in the site, especially the burnt area where the wings and the fuel tanks went down. Fuselage has been moved. And also we're going to be checking our photographic evidence with the Malaysians, but it appeared that, again, that big cone section had been more or less split into two, and also there could have been possibly changes to the tail fin as well. So we're going to be comparing that, but this is really, again, a job for experts to do. We will just, we really want to stick to reporting exactly what we see and not speculate.
Go to Ukraine?
Yes. It would lay out intel regarding the Malaysian.
I told you guys just to stick with us and we get you some more intel.
Do you have any information on when that's supposed to be released?
So I would refer you to the intelligence community, who will today be further declassifying information, and we'll be putting out additional information that supports what we have said. That we believe the most likely outcome here was that this was an SA-11 originated from Russian separatist-controlled areas. I'd refer you to them for details on that.
Okay,
it will be coming out today.
What time?
I don't have those details.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Also, Russia has recently been questioning a Ukrainian Su-25 fighter jet that was flying no more than 3 miles away from the Boeing plane before it was shot down, and they've sort of suggested that it may have been involved. They don't know, but they're questioning
I think they've done more than suggest that. Yes.
What evidence does the U.S. have to rule out that as a possibility at this point? Because I've heard reports that the U.S. already sort of knocked that out.
A couple points. First, as we've said, when you look at the kind of markings on the plane and how it looked like it was brought down, obviously that's consistent with an SA-11, which is fired from the ground. I haven't seen any information that indicates a Ukrainian jet. We're still looking into it, obviously. The president of Ukraine has said there was not. But again, we like to independently verify things for Matt before you ask the question. And so I haven't seen information that would indicate that. And all of the, the preponderance of the information that we've laid out and that the intelligence community will lay out was that this was an SA-11 fired from the ground from a separatist-controlled area.
And there are also several reports that the Ukrainian military has continued to issue attacks in eastern Ukraine, despite everything going on with the investigation. What kind of information do you have on that? And has the U.S. said anything whatsoever to Kiev authorities about a ceasefire?
Well, the president of Ukraine is committed to a 40-kilometer ceasefire around the crash site, and I believe the fighting is outside of that 40 kilometers. I think he's held to it. And look, a ceasefire takes two sides, right? So where there are attacks against the Ukrainian people or Ukrainian forces, they obviously have a responsibility, an obligation to protect their people. But it's my understanding that they have held the ceasefire around the crash site.
And just one more question.
Yeah.
Is the U.S. concerned about that fighting continuing amidst the investigation?
Well, we're concerned about all of the fighting in eastern Ukraine, which is the result of these pro-Russian separatists, who we've seen what they're capable of doing, not just this week, but over many weeks, including when they've bragged about shooting down planes in the past. So we've called on President Putin very directly to use his influence to help end the fighting there.
The Europeans today met, the European Council met
Yes.
and said that they were going to expand and enhance.
I think visa bans, asset
Correct.
freezes. Yep.
Correct. I presume that you think that's a good thing?
We do, yes.
You do? Do you have anything more to say about it?
I don't.
Than just that? Just that it's a good
Do you
thing?
think they could go further, though?
I
mean, there's some reluctance. I think there's some Europeans that want to go towards a tier 3 to expand it onto different sectors.
Right.
And also an arms embargo, which would perhaps put the French in a difficult position.
Mhm.
And there's some who don't, notably the French. So do you think, would you support the EU to go further in these
Well, I think we would support anyone who wants to put increased pressure on the Russians here. As I said yesterday, and as the Secretary and the President have both said, this should be a wake-up call for the Europeans, quite frankly.
Going back to the stuff that the Russian Defense Ministry put out yesterday and some of the stuff online, is it I'm assuming that you've seen some of it now.
Seen some of it.
Do you regard all of that as complete fabrication?
Well, I haven't seen all of it, but certainly the narrative that they are propagating, we very strongly disagree with and have many, many, many pieces of evidence to prove otherwise.
And those pieces of evidence you expect to be presented?
At this intelligence community briefing, my former colleagues, I told you
well,
we would try.
we'll all wait with bated breath
I'm
for
sure
that.
you will.
And then I want to ask about the evidence that the intel community is going to release. Is that going to be expanded? Is that going to be more than what we've seen or heard?
I think if there wasn't, I'm not sure why they would be doing it. But yes, you can hold me to that tomorrow. No, but I think that they will be. We have. There's going to be further declassification. We will be putting out more information later.
Just with regard to the intelligence you're going to be releasing later today, the administration, a member of the Russian Defense Ministry's Advisory Council came out earlier today, basically with a statement discrediting what you guys are saying. And one of the arguments he made is that the satellite that you have above Ukraine can only register missile launches within a zone of 50 to 100 kilometers, and so that there's no way with any specificity the U.S. can say that the missile came from rebel-controlled territory. Could you respond to that?
I think for more details, I think the intelligence community can probably respond. I, suffice to say, strongly disagree with what he said. We've seen a history throughout this conflict of the Russian government putting out just sheer propaganda, falsehoods about what's happening. We have a great deal of open source evidence and intelligence to back it up that supports what we believe to be true, and we'll talk about that more in the coming days.
Thank you.
Ukraine. Can you tell us anything about the remains of the passengers that were turned in?
Yes, we are pleased that the victims' remains have finally started their journey back to their loved ones. Let me see if I can get the details about this specifically. If you just give me 1 second. This was part of the agreement that the Malaysian authorities reached with the separatist leader to do 3 things: move the bodies by train to Kharkiv, where they will be handed over to a Dutch representative, hand over the black boxes to a Malaysian team, and guarantee safe access to the crash site for investigators to begin their work. And thus far, all 3 of these things have happened. The bodies have been moved, black boxes have been delivered to the Malaysians, and monitors had much improved access today. We are hopeful that that access will continue.
On the Facebook page of the U.S. Embassy in Kiev, there's a map showing the SA-11 surface-to-air missile trajectory, as well as the flight path of the aircraft. Did this image originate from the State Department?
It's commercial imagery that's available commercially.
And
I know we posted it on our Facebook page in the embassy, but it is commercial imagery.
So commercial imagery, and did somebody at the State Department or from the embassy put in the flight tracks?
I don't think anyone here did. I think that this is something we've been using internally inside the broader USG, who's been talking about this. But let me see if I can get you some more details on that.
Okay.
And flight paths are obviously publicly available information.
Right, but the track of the missile.
Yeah, it's a good question, Lucas, and let me check on that.
I fully share the sentiment of the Dutch foreign minister, who says that it's despicable to try to capitalize on a tragic event like this for political gains. I fully share that view. And I also believe it is despicable to try to preempt the outcome of the investigation and start the blame game. Those people who are doing that may actually feel very embarrassed when the investigation might produce a totally different result.
Well, what do you think happened then?
I don't know. I wasn't there. I haven't seen the evidence. Actually, the so-called black boxes, as you know, are now in possession of the Malaysian authorities, who will be cooperating with the Dutch and, of course, ICAO and the United Nations. So we'll certainly find out soon. Actually, before that happens even, there might be some clues, for example, in the air traffic control tapes, which have been seized by the Ukrainian security service and held without any comment.
You say you don't know what happened. The Russian defense minister yesterday had a press appearance where he seemed to indicate or blame or cast some kind of doubt or culpability on Ukraine, saying that a Ukrainian military flight was in that area around the time of the crash. Is that what you really believe?
Well, the Russian Defense Ministry did not blame actually anybody, but it produced hard evidence showing that some questions need to be answered by the Ukrainian authorities, which they have failed to do so far, concentrating rather on producing fake evidence. In the meantime, the United States government has said that it has mounting evidence pointing to what they to those whom they call rebels or separatists, but have yet to produce any tangible piece of evidence. So, in the lack of any other evidence which would point to the contrary, I think the strongest evidence so far is the one produced by the Russian Minister of Defense.
I will tell you what we reported on today is that we were out at the 3 or 4 sites of the 8 major sites today. Not only did we see some human remains there, but I must say the stench of human remains was very, very strong. And we also went for the first time with a Malaysian delegation to where the cockpit impacted, and one of their first observations is that there could very well be human remains there, judging by just the smell again as well. When we arrived this morning with the Malaysian delegation, 3 of them, there was actually an eerie quietness above the whole crash site. All of the emergency workers had left. All of the people who were doing any kind of organization had left. They had even taken down the tents. So there was no activity whatsoever, and that's what we'll be reporting on tonight in our report that goes out to our 57 member states. In fact, we had an internal discussion today on whether to say it's already trending towards a cleanup operation, because there's no active recovery of remains going on right now. When we arrived again to that cockpit crash area, which really kind of pancaked that cockpit section, there must have been about 30 or 40 journalists right there next to the area. They weren't being chased away or anything. Some of them weren't even doing stand-ups there. So it gives you an indication of how porous that entire area is. And then one more thing, Brooke, is that while we were there, you were talking about rockets in your previous segment, there was quite a bit of heavy weaponry fire in the distance. We could see a big kind of mushroom cloud, and we could definitely hear it. You can imagine the impact that had on the Malaysians. This was their first day combing over the wreckage.